Hi, folks. Seth MacFarlane here, and I got to tell you, this is without a doubt the strangest Comic-Con that I can remember. We're all sitting in our homes, unless you're in Florida or Texas or Arizona or Orange County, I guess. But the rest of us are sitting in our homes protecting ourselves from COVID, as opposed to sitting in packed auditoriums giving COVID to each other, which is what we would normally be doing at Comic-Con. But I think when Ann and Neil and Brannon and Jason and Jeff come out here and start talking about Cosmos Possible Worlds, which premieres on Fox this fall, you will find their passion for this project so infectious, that you're going to forget you're not in San Diego. So science is on everyone's minds right now. We're all desperately waiting for science to bail us out of this mess. We as Americans, and we're not alone in this, have a complicated relationship with science. We are known to mistrust it. We're known to second guess it. We're known to question it. And then the shit hits the fan, and who do we turn to bail us out? Science. We turn to scientists. And I think it's because we know, deep down in our heart of hearts, we understand that this is the only mechanism that we as a species have ever conceived that can offer us any defense, any protection from things like the ravages of nature, from things like disease. And we realize that in the many millennia prior to the emergence of the scientific method, we as a species advanced comparatively little. And then here comes science just a few hundred years ago, and all of a sudden we're moving at breakneck speed. Television sets, automobiles, airplanes, computers, space travel, medicines, vaccines. And if we take nothing else away from this experience, I think going forward, it is incumbent upon us to rediscover our relationship with science and with the people in our community who devote their lives to becoming experts in things like chemistry, biology, medicine, astrophysicists, and what those people do to propel our species into the future and how much we rely on them. If we can rediscover that, this will all have been worth it. So here to articulate all this much better than I can are Ann, Neil, Brannon, Jason, and Jeff. Did I forget anyone? Nope, that's all of them. And they're going to talk to us about Cosmos Possible Worlds.
We were hunters and foragers. The frontier was everywhere. We were bounded only by the earth and the ocean and the sky. The open road still softly calls, like a nearly forgotten song of childhood. Despite our limitations and fallibilities, we humans are capable of greatness. How far will our nomadic species have wandered by the end of the next century and the next millennium? Who will we become in the far future?
Hey, Comic-Con. Team Cosmos here. Season 3, Cosmos Possible Worlds. And I'm your host and narrator of that show. We've got others from behind the scenes in what Cosmos is and how it was made. And why don't we just lead off with Ann Druyan, who is the creative force behind it all. Ann, tell us about Possible Worlds.
The next season of Cosmos is fueled by a sense of hope. And to me, in creating Cosmos with Brannon Braga, what we wanted to do was capture for a global audience a vision not only of the exoplanets that we've recently begun to discover, not only of the hidden worlds that are beneath our feet and all around us, but invisible to us without the lens of science, but also a vision of this world, the one we can still have, if we get our act together and we begin to use our science and high technology with wisdom and foresight. This cosmos will take you to the beginning of time, to the distant future, and to the worlds that surround us that we've only just begun to discover.
Ann, when I tell people the title of this season, Possible Worlds, if the first word is the word cosmos, and then you see the other two words, possible worlds, they want to just think about exoplanets, right? Because that's kind of in the news. And I think what role Cosmos will play in people's hearts and minds and sense of the world is that the word world is not just a physical place. The world is yes, it is a physical place, but it's also, what are you doing on that physical place? A world you create on that world. And so I one of my favorite elements and features of these 13 episodes is it shatters your restricted sense of what a world is and brings you to places. And now you think about bees and plant life and the mycelium and all of these various other things that we get to call worlds.
We're so lucky to have Jeff here, who is the person who took the worlds that Brannon and I were imagining and made them manifest.
Wait, so Jeff, do you walk around saying, I am creator of worlds?
I am a student of science, is what I'm right now. And working on the series has been, life-changing, because it changes it specifically, besides getting to do all the research with all the scientists and Ann and Andre, our in-house guy, is that it's like the whole episode on intelligence and life. It's just eye-opening. It's mind-expanding, because these things are all around us. Never considered it. Always was afraid of bees. Had no idea what they did and how great they are. And now, the whole mycelium thing, we dive into empathy of creatures. I mean, it's just unbelievable, Ann, Brannon, what you guys pulled together. It's been an education. And I thought I was science literate, and now I know the best I can ever be as a student.
I would say, just to underscore what Jeff says, this has been, for me, this season of Cosmos feels so much more. Whether it's the storytelling elements of it, whether it's the ideas that are expressed and how emotionally connected I feel to the science of this. And in these times right now, I feel more than ever, there's a great sense of hopefulness and a great sense of wonder that are mixed, but at the end of the day, it's super entertaining, and they're great stories that are told. And I thank Ann and Brannon for, creating something that is that much fun and yet that meaningful.
It is striking, and when you think back to when we first started thinking about this season, how different the world was.
Oh, so true. So true. And there are a lot of elements in this new season that feel almost a little bit precognitive of the drama of this year. And most, I think, emotionally for me, are the stories of the heroes that we met in the course of our explorations. I think every little part of this new season is a reason to hope, to have confidence in our species, because we're all descended from generations of people who had their backs to the wall, and they managed to persevere and endure and take hardships that we can't even imagine. And now it's our turn to stand up.
You know, Ann, I want to add something here. My late father, he remembers the 1980 series with Carl, hosted by Carl, and what he remembered most about that series, which is a DNA strand that continues through to the current season, is how seamlessly different branches of science are blended in the storytelling and in the narrative. Without Cosmos, you would just think, well, here's chemistry and here's biology and they're siloed and here's this and pick up this book, now put it down. And the fact that so much of human exploration of ideas can be stitched back together to give a coherent understanding of what we need to do to take action, I think may be the greatest gift that Cosmos has given us, a reminder that nature does not separate what it does into textbooks. It's all one unfolding of a natural story. And Cosmos brings that together so that you can think of our existence in this world in a holistic way. And so that when you take action, you realize that your actions are affecting everything, not just this one little bit relative to over here. And I remember Carl beautifully saying one day that air molecules don't carry passports. They can just go wherever they want without anybody telling them no. Same with water molecules. And so a reminder that the very system that sustains us, this ecosystem, doesn't know anything about countries or skin color or religion or who you worship. Yet we all depend on it for our survival. So these are persistently delivered messages in the Cosmos storytelling that I think has and will continue to distinguish it from all other documentaries that are made.
When Carl was beginning his career as a scientist, there wasn't a single journal on Earth where a geologist and a biologist could collaborate and expect to have a paper published. And of course, he was an editor of the first journal, vigorous, to ever do that. And I remember that one of the epithets hurled at Carl critically was that he was wildly interdisciplinary. But of course, he knew that a cosmic perspective requires all of the sciences and mathematics and the arts too.
You know you're doing something right when a huge insult is actually a compliment.
It's true. That's right. That's a feat.
When the scripts were written and we went into pre-production, it was a whole different ballgame because now you had to actually bring these things to life. Some of the sequences were pretty ambitious, and the way we make the show is we take all 13 hours, all 13 scripts, and we do what's called crossboarding. We prepare to shoot them all at the same time, meaning if you're going to go to England, you want to shoot all your England stuff from the various episodes there, or China, or wherever it is you're going. And it's complicated because you may be on a soundstage or on a location shooting from 5 different scenes or bits from 5 different episodes. So you have to have it all in your head and know how things are going to connect. And it's complicated, but it's fun. It was a lot of fun.
I got to add here, we went to China to shoot at the world's largest telescope. This was a huge trip to take. Meanwhile, in the sound studio on green screen, we had me in front of the Brooklyn Bridge, which is inches from where I live in New York. That was just crazy. That was like, it took me a few days to just get over that fact.
Well, but Neil, remember that Brooklyn Bridge thing was a shot, and it was probably just a little paragraph of you talking about the cities are like a brain, but we had 6 pages in China. So sometimes you have to make a decision about what's, everybody's seen that bridge. Very few have seen this remarkable radio telescope.
I think also that was an effect shot because we used Jeff's time-lapse photography as the background of that to accentuate the storytelling. But
it wasn't just a green screen image, it was a green screen video. Right, and so the cars were going rapidly while I'm speaking at a normal pace. That was a very cool effect, I might add, by the way.
You had to be in China to shoot Brooklyn. Well, there was a lot of that in the cross-boarding, but I got to hand it to Ann and Brannon. We traveled around the world, and to you too, Neil. But Jeff's team was able to take all these pieces that we shot and seamlessly put them together. And this goes a lot to the writing, certainly, and to Neil, to your guidance as a host on the show. But I love the way they all came together, and it feels like it's all one story that's flowing towards a direction. And yet you went through all of those hurdles, so kudos.
Well, there's a reason for that, and that is we're like a spider web in that Ann and Brannon reached out with their tentacles and found the science, then they spread them back to us. We processed everything into how we could actually get it done, then it went back to Ann, Brannon, and Neil. And Neil, as I've said before, he did an amazing job in that he's half the time just on a green screen, and he was able to sell the visual effects because, as I've learned, the visual effects on their own are okay, but when they're involved in the stories, they're amazing. And the series is a bunch of stories that you've never heard before about how we got to where we are. And each story builds upon the next, so that at the end of episode 13, not only do you walk out with this hope and understanding of the beauty of nature and science, but you walk out with the ability to do it. It makes it accessible. And so visual effects, speaking for all my 15 houses in 15 countries around the world, are so honored to have been a part of this and work with such a great team of professionals, from scheduling to figuring out how we're doing it. This is an amazing series, and I'm just proud as punch to be part of it.
Sometimes we did 8 pages a day from different episodes. And how was it easier this time around for you? Was it? How was it this time?
Well, that's a great question, because I know that I'm not an actor, and what actors do is they take a script and then they sort of own it, and then they just sort of do it. And I'm really not an actor, but I am an actual person, and I'm an actual scientist. But you have to do a little bit of acting in the sense that I'm going off of a script, and I'm not just ad-libbing. And so how do I sell a script? That took practice for me at least. I mean, actors, this is acting 101, but for me, that took practice. And I'm not just reading, I have to absorb it and then bring it back. That's easy for like the astrophysics bits, but this is so multidisciplinary that I had to really practice being completely comfortable talking about plants and the mycelium and biology and the chemistry and all the rest of that. And at a point that Jeff could have made, but he didn't, was there I am imagining I'm in front of a green screen, imagining an exploding star. I could do that. I got exploding stars. But now you want me to imagine a worm? I'm sorry. Give me a picture or something. What am I looking at here? And so they deliver the picture in the maws of this creature. So, okay, I got it now. And then I just sort of picture that. So, yeah, it was. I'd learned a lot just interacting with content, not ad-libbing, but making that content work, so that everything seamlessly comes together in this great spider web that Jeff talks about.
And I just have to say that your performance, you really did act so that I believed that you were speeding through the mycelium network, the underground network that unifies 90% of the world's plants and trees.
I could tell you this, that when we did the scene with the little boy who had the brain damage, and when we go into this, there's nothing creepier looking than a very old medical facility, right? It's like, oh my gosh, how did anyone ever
Just a
come out of this?
medical facility, but
A psychiatric ward. And you just look at this recreated from a century ago, but there's a little boy who had, and I'm just, and the script is so pendulous with emotion that I teared up. And no, that wasn't acting. I actually felt that. If you actually feel it, is it acting? I don't think so. It's just so and by the way, I would tear up each time I encountered that script. So it's not like one passage I went through and then I was good on the other side. So I'd like to think that in the total package that Cosmos represents, you're not just intellectually enlightened, you're emotionally captured. And usually, knowledge plus emotion brings action. Not just knowledge alone, and action without knowledge can be mindless, but the two together can be highly potent when you need to bring about change in the world for the greater good of us all.
It's about mixing ideas and emotion. And when people make that connection, that's what makes it memorable. And so, on Cosmos, it's very moving to think that you're telling kind of stories that could be taken as intellectual concepts and turning them into emotional storytelling. And when Ann talks about the heroes, and Neil talks about tearing up, and Brannon talks about where we're shooting in all of these places, including a 150-year-old institution. I mean, all of that created an environment to allow those stories to really be emotional. And that's why I think it will be, in a weird way, something that sticks with people, as it has stuck with me. So for me, it was a great opportunity to be a storyteller. And I know Jeff and all the key crew that we've had, and there's been hundreds of people who have worked over the season, whether it's concept artists or people delivering the final animation people, all of them had that same refrain. They wanted to be part of something using their storytelling skills that creates an emotional bond, but more meaningful. And this is that magic secret sauce. And I thank everybody for allowing me to join.
Well, can I just say that, the reason we got to do season 2 of Cosmos was Seth MacFarlane. When I think of what Seth has done for Cosmos, it's not only that he brought me to Peter Rice of Fox to actually get the show on the road and to get a partner who never sought to change a single word of our scripts, never asked us to trim our sails. And Brannon
and he made you take out all the curse words. He told you.
There was that. But Brannon and I had complete freedom, creative freedom, to make the cosmoses in each season that we believed in. And I mean, you can see, I think, how much this team, how much we all care about each other, and what a thrilling experience it was to work together. And, I just feel so lucky because just every one of you gave it everything you had.
I have to second that. They did. Everybody worked on this, really gave their heart and soul, and it shows in the, and Anna, to that first meeting when I remember meeting you, and the question was, how would we do this? And it was everything, was from the infinite to the infinitesimal. And I was so in, it was like a lightning rod. I'm like, oh my God, you can take animation and you can mix it with live. I mean, there was so many opportunities. You could take visual effects that they use to do Marvel movies, but we can take Jeff Okun, who's the head of the VES and an award-winning visual effects artist, and plop him in the center, and then say, guys, help us tell the story of the truth.
And not only that, but thanks to Jason, we could have Viggo Mortensen portray one of the most heroic and unknown scientists in human history, and to really give expression to all of the integrity and the guts and the genius of this unknown scientist who, thanks to everyone involved and Viggo, I hope people will remember and revere for a long time to come.
And not to mention the who dressed me. It was Ruth Carter.
It was Ruth Carter. That's right.
Yeah, the magnetic force that Cosmos represented among highly talented people who were best known for these mega projects, 100, 200, $300 million movies. Ruth Carter was the costume designer for Black Panther.
Well, I found the visual effects challenging on Cosmos, to say the least, because there's a bar to live up to. So reading the scripts, my first response was panic. And then as everything is solved, meaning little baby steps one at a time, we broke it down into sequences because of the amount of material available to me through Ann and Brannon. And then you cast your vendors based on the style of effect. And like our key vendors were UPP in Prague and Boof in Paris and Scanline in Vancouver. And what was great about their participation, is that everybody was so excited to work on Cosmos that they would exceed our expectations. And they just wanted to use this as a playground to show off stuff that's never been seen before. And so our abilities to try to visualize various things have to do with the collaboration of not just the vendors, but the in-house team, led by Arthur Mesa. And, we would have reviews with Ann and Brannon almost every single day, and all the scientists were in there, and it was a room of 15 people, which makes any visual effect hard to get through. And so in my personal journey, when you get to where you think you're going and then you show something and new science has evolved that makes what we just did pointless, it's a bit frustrating. And I had to learn, which is a life skill that the show taught me, I had to learn that it's an opportunity. It's not frustration. Here's a chance to up the game another level or 3. And so things that we did, the whole thing about photons is pretty amazing. It has to do with quantum physics, but it also bleeds into biology and a few other things. The whole quantum physics world, the Alcubierre drive, which is a concept that came out of some scientist, Alcubierre actually, saw Star Trek and said, I can make a warp drive, and except for the power they're still working on, they have. And then there's another sequence, about the light sail project, which Ann's involved in. And it's, it was never like going to work. It was like going to a playground in spite of the hurdles and the frustrations. But I can say that in my darkest moments, I just found if I went into a room alone with a piece of paper and I would draw up something, and then I'd get with Ann and Brannon and I would talk them through it. And usually they would say, I have no idea what you draw, because I don't draw well. But it was just such a great back and forth. And it showed me, the beauty of science. And science, when I'd hit a wall and had no idea how to represent something like the inside of mycelium and a yeast node, the science leads the way, and it's so much more beautiful than I ever knew. We deal with microscopic levels of butterfly wings, which is so stunning. And we also do great vistas, and historical things, and go to places, and that people can't get to because they either don't exist or they now have been trashed by civilization. So again, it's just...
I think remember the day that the image of an actual black hole came out, and you had to redo all the black hole stuff? I think I heard sobbing from you closed your door and I heard crying in there.
Well, we did new things with black holes nobody had done before, and then NASA found some black holes and they did a mathematical representation, which oddly enough matched our representation except for color-wise.
I think my favorite...
I would say, Jeff, I only thought of it in this moment, that you are a next generation in a long line of artists who have served scientists. We've been trying to represent science through the talent of artists ever since we've had science. You know, you look at the drawings of birds by Audubon. You look at the naturalist who, there was no photography back then, so somebody had to draw it, and generally it wasn't, you know, the scientists themselves. And so you are the next generation who are taking this into the realm of visual effects. So I just want to...
It's amazing, exciting beyond belief. And what I really love about the opportunity is that we got to show things as complex as they are to people that don't deal with this every day and make it so understandable. And that's what I mean by the collaboration with Ann and Brannon and you, Neil, because we had a Sept discussion that impacted what it is, you know. And, you know, many of those things just saying, just trust me and look over there because it's going to be blue, whatever it is, because we didn't know at that time or something.
And by the way, quantum physics is one of the most unvisualizable stuff there ever was in this universe. And you jumped right in it with 2 feet.
Speaking of the visual splendor of Cosmos, there are Jeff's magnificent visual effects, but Cosmos also has magnificent animated sequences throughout. And this is the brilliant work of the incomparable Caravallo and directors Lucas Gray, Brent Woods, and producer Ali Corrigan, and background designer Andrew Brandu. And I'm so proud of this particular sequence because you are the first audience on Earth ever to see it. We saved it just for you, just for Comic-Con. It's a jewel. And what's so great about it is that it contains one of the most powerful ideas in mathematics. It's the power of exponentials.
There are many versions of how the game of chess came to be. Some say it started in India. Others say it was created by the Grand Vizier to the King of Persia at the dawn of the 7th century. The most important piece was the king, and the object of the game was to capture him. So the game was called, in Persian, Shahmat. Shah for king, mat for dead, which is where the phrase checkmate comes from. The King of Persia was so delighted by his first game of chess that he offered to grant its inventor any wish his heart might desire. Imagine the king's surprise when the Grand Vizier responded with what seemed to be the most modest of requests. Your Highness, just give me 1 grain of rice on the first square of the chessboard, twice that on the second square, twice that on the third square, and so on, until each square has its proper amount of rice. No, the king protested. This is far too modest a request for so important an invention. He offered jewels, palaces, mighty steeds, but the Grand Vizier refused them all. It was grains of rice, and rice grains only, that he wanted. So be it, said the king, thinking he'd gotten off much too easily. The power of doubling, what is called exponential growth, is so awesome that if the king were to fulfill his promise, there would be 500 million grains of rice by only the middle of the 4th row of the chessboard. By the time the king's men got to the last square on the chessboard, the 64th, the Grand Vizier would have received nearly 18.5 quintillion grains of rice. 75 billion tons. That's the equivalent of what everyone on Earth today would consume for 150 years. The fulfillment of the king's pledge bankrupted him, and legend has it that the Grand Vizier, whose only power was his knowledge of math, now sat upon his throne.
When I first heard the title, Possible Worlds, for this 3rd season of Cosmos, I almost welled up with emotion because I knew what it meant. I knew what Ann would do with that title. I knew what it would mean to have that expressed through the medium of Cosmos itself. So for me, Cosmos Possible Worlds is the summation of the hope that the human spirit, coupled with wisdom, as well as the methods and tools of science, what those can be to the future of civilization. And I don't know anything else that has a chance of accomplishing this than Cosmos itself.
Cosmos Possible Worlds, to me, is inspirational on how to live going forward. And it gave me, if not the specific tools, it gave me the tools and the way to find the tools to actually move forward comfortably and make a difference in everything. So it was exciting to see in stories, inspirational and factual, and it's a must-see as far as I'm concerned.
Possible Worlds is everything that they're describing in terms of, truth as a survival. Truth is a survival mechanism, or as the show says, skepticism is a survival mechanism. But really, for me, it's been a big part of my life. Doing these two series with Ann. It's deeply personal in so many ways. Yes, it's been a learning experience, and it's altered the way I look at reality to a large degree, but it's also just been the friendships that I formed, the deep, lasting friendships that I formed with the people making this are really wonderful.
I think in these times where we are right now, and as challenged as we are on this, in this world, and how we see that we are all kind of one people, this species, the idea of the science and the stories of the heroes that have stood up against ideas and used the methods of science to find a way through and to create a sense of hope. Possible Worlds is that for me. And I had the same reaction that Neil may have, mentioned about goosebumps when I heard Possible Worlds, when I heard Ann's direction for this. I thought immediately, I understand what it is. It's hopeful. And hope is not just a faith that something good will happen. Hope is the idea when plan A isn't working, what is plan B? Let's plan around that. Let's find a way through. And I think now more than ever is the time to hear those stories and to experience this. And I'm really excited and hopeful the way people will react to this and that it may be moving.
I've been doing this since I was 27 years old. And when I was imagining season 3 of Cosmos, as so often, I heard Carl Sagan's voice in my heart, and it was Carl wondering, who will we become in the distant future? Are we to venture to these other worlds? And Carl, in his inimitable way, writes, won't be us, because time will have changed us. And I was thinking to myself, how can we change? How will we change? I know we have to change. I think everyone knows we have to change. And one of the really thrilling parts of this moment in history is you can actually see change happening, not just in the mind of a single leader, but in the hearts of millions of people. The dream of this series for me was to find the stories that illuminate us at our very best, us at our bravest in the darkest times. To me, possible worlds are the worlds we're just beginning to discover and explore, and the hidden worlds made visible by science, and the most precious possible world of all, this one, if we get our act together and work together to make that future.
Well, nothing can follow that other than the conclusion of this panel. I want to thank all of you in the Comic-Con universe for supporting what we do, what we have done, and you're a special community to us because you're scientifically literate and you help spread the love of what it is we do to all those who need to hear it and see it. So watch for us in the fall on Fox, 8 o'clock, 7 Central. on Tuesday nights. Check your local listings.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.